Hello and welcome to this episode of Teachers Talk Tech, an EdTech podcast by Cambridge University Press and Assessment for language teachers by language teachers on using technology inside and outside of the classroom. My name is Jairo Reinders and my guests today are María Durán, author, content creator and founder of Pedagogical, and Katie Storia from Cambridge University Press and Assessment. Maria and Katie, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Very excited to be here, Hayo.
Well, so am I, because we have, of course, another fabulous topic, as we always do on Teachers Talk Tech. But today we're going to talk about something that I think a lot of teachers will be interested in learning a little bit more about because it's so popular with our learners. And that is the use of short form videos, things like, TikToks, YouTube Shorts, Facebook Shorts, and all these other sort of platforms. So just maybe very quickly, Maria, just clarify for us, what exactly do we mean by short form video? What makes a video a short form video?
So basically, a short form video is a kind of video that, like you said, has become popular over the years with the use of platforms such as TikTok and Instagram. And they're usually in a vertical format, and they last for about from 15 to 90 seconds, I'm going to say. And they're meant to be engaging, they're meant to be entertaining, and they're meant to be, like, I'd say, easily consumable for people.
I think you nailed it. All right. So staying with you, Maria, for a moment, what are some of the benefits for language education of short form videos?
Well, first of all, they're a super engaging way to make your students feel interested about the language, right? For me as a teacher, I always like to find a way to make students feel connected with the language. I always want to teach through something that I know they're going to find interesting, they're going to like, right? So short form videos are definitely an engaging way to get to do that. They're also relatable for students, and they are also like very visually appealing, right? They really grab your attention, right? Which is what we want as teachers as well.
I think Maria has really covered it. That was a great explanation. I think the engagement factor is so high with short form videos that students become really motivated when they see them. They see the real world being brought into the classroom. And it's such a familiar tool too, as you said, Maria, TikTok, Instagram. This is something that students have in their regular everyday lives. And then when they have them in their English lives as well, it makes the class seem more authentic, more real, and more relatable and relevant to them, I would say.
100%. I mean, I think it's a way of just speaking to students in their own language. They're already used to, consuming in that format. Like you said, why not bring it to the class? It's such a relatable way to do that.
Yeah, and as you already said, Maria, it's also such a visual format, isn't it? Which, of course, especially for beginner level learners, etc., it's very easy to understand what is, the language content because it's complemented by the audio, it's complemented by the video. So yeah, very interesting format. But of course, we're interested here primarily in pedagogical applications. So starting maybe with you, Katie, what are some of the ways that teachers can use these for supporting what is happening in the language classroom?
There are lots of different ways that teachers could use these short form videos. They could be a language focus. For example, the grammar and the vocabulary could be a focus of the lesson through a very kind of natural format, with these being in the short form video. The short form video could be a stimulus for students to react to. It could be something provocative where they feel compelled and interested and they want to respond. It could be informational. It could be something that piques their interest and their curiosity so that they want to respond in kind, perhaps with their own video as well. I think that videos are really great for sparking discussion because they are so authentic. And there's really no limit to the topic of these short form videos. And the people who are presenting the short form videos also don't necessarily have to be experts in whatever that topic is. And they also don't need to be native speakers. So students can be presented with a range of accents, which of course is fantastic for listening comprehension. That's just a few of the different ways that they could be used in class.
Let's get very, very practical. So Katie, how would videos is, of course, a very specific format, and especially these short form videos that might be a little bit new to some of our listeners. What would be a good sort of pedagogical process of introducing these into class? I would imagine you wouldn't just rock up to class one day and suddenly start playing a whole bunch of short videos without a plan. So what have we learned from teachers' experiences and maybe research about how this can best be brought into the classroom?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Hayo, when you mentioned the word plan. I think the teachers need to have a bit of a plan with short form videos. They need to have watched them and carefully considered whether the language level is right for the students, whether the content is also appropriate for the students in their class. The teacher knows the students best. And so some classes may be more comfortable with certain types of material, others not as much. So the teacher needs to go in and have planned a lesson or part of a lesson based on the material in the short form video. I think it's never a mistake to have kind of a before you watch sort of activity. And this could be there to activate prior knowledge for students, to make them feel comfortable, to make them start to be curious, pique their curiosity, and also to make them do some prediction what the video could be about and maybe what the perspective of the person in the video or the people in the video is. I think it's also helpful to guide students through watching the video, giving them something to focus on, whether it's noticing particular uses of grammar or vocabulary or content or the perspective, the theme from the video as well. And then afterwards, of course, discussion. Discussion is perfect as a follow-up to these videos. But that's not to say that the use of the video has to solely be in the class. There could be a flipped classroom approach where the students watch the video, again, that the teacher has vetted at home, and they come prepared to class to discuss or to debate. There are really endless options, I would say.
And also, I think it is so cool because there's so many ways to go about it and so many different kinds of videos that you can show to your students. It really depends the kind of videos. I usually like to divide the videos that work best in class into 3 categories. Firstly, you can find videos about, that cover one specific grammar topic or one specific pronunciation topic. Then you can also find videos that are more based on real life situations, which are my favorite to film, by the way. They're really, because they help students learn in context. And for instance, I get the feeling that students really want to learn about the practical stuff in life, right? Like, how can I go to a cafe and then order a coffees? Or how can I just, go to a supermarket and buy a piece of meat or a loaf of bread, right? Like, there's the practical stuff that they're really interested in. So those kinds of videos usually really work really well in class for me. And then there's the kind of videos that I mostly use for listening purposes. And they basically show one person, one public figure that students feel really interested in, or they admire, or they, whatever. So yeah, it's like the 3 main, it really depends on the 3 main categories that I like to mentally divide short videos into.
To summarize what both of you are saying is, 1, select your videos, different types of videos for different purposes. There's a wide range to choose from. As you said, Katie, carefully, of course, vet those videos to make sure not only that they're appropriate for the age of the students and so on, but also that they contain whatever you are at that point interested in teaching, whether it's a specific grammar point or whether it's a pragmatic issue, maybe, showing a particular situation or what have you. And I think the other thing as well, what I've noticed in my own classes with short form video is it's quite helpful to talk to students a little bit about why you're suddenly playing short form videos, because I have noticed in the past sometimes students thinking that, now the lesson's over and now we're going from education to entertainment. And yes, the videos can be entertaining, but of course we use them to educate, right? So I think I have sometimes had interesting conversations with students, and it was fun to find out what they thought the benefits would be of using not only short form videos, but also other types of informal content, whether it's computer games or TV programs, etc. And it was very enlightening to see them sort of recognize that they can use all these different sources, not just the textbook or what the teacher says, for enhancing their learning.
I think it's really interesting to make them understand that they can choose to use social media for their own good. As users, have the power to choose whether to be entertained, which is perfectly fine, but also to learn something. Like, you can also be taught something during, the time you're scrolling down your screen. So important for me to highlight that to students. Like, you have the power. There is a whole world that you can learn from online. So be wise, be careful, and make sure you're picky with what you consume.
Yeah, I really like that point. I think that's actually a key insight, is that it has its own benefits. And, we've talked about some of them, but I think perhaps maybe in some ways the most interesting one is that it empowers students once they have seen how it can be used to help them in their learning, because suddenly it opens up all sorts of possibilities for them.
I think what's also brilliant about them is that it really provides students with a kind of achievable model for what they could do. Students will not be able, in most cases, to film a 2-hour long movie, but they can film a 45-second video on their phone. So it's something that it empowers them, as you've said. It also makes them feel like maybe if this is something that they do regularly, they might be experts at how to film videos. And so it gives them the sense of, okay, I may not be an expert at English yet, but I am an expert at making these short form videos. So it gives them a sense of confidence, I think, and willingness to kind of take risks a bit more with the language, because they are already experts at one part of what they're doing in the lesson then.
I totally agree with that. I think it is so powerful because I think you're giving them the power not only to work on their English skills, but also to work on their communication skills. That they're going to be, like you said, they're going to be feeling more confident in front of the camera, which is something that it's going to be so helpful for them in the future. I mean, nowadays, you need to be like almost native in not only English, but also social media wise.
100%, absolutely. And of course, we have a literature going back at least 2 decades in terms of research on the benefits of digital storytelling. And digital storytelling, of course, is incredibly powerful because firstly, it's about stories, and stories are what we literally grow up with. It's how we very first things we learn in our lives. And in particular, digital storytelling is empowering because it allows learners who have limited linguistic resources to use audio, video, and images and whatever, anime and so on, to craft their own story. But as you said, Maria, it also allows them to then communicate that. So it gives them a sense of being heard, being listened to. And if I have a teacher who wants to hear from me, who actually gives me the tools to allow me to share about myself and in a different format, that really opens up the classroom and makes me feel that I'm part of the community and probably engages me tremendously. So the idea of having students create their own videos is really interesting. So how would you go about doing that? And what would be some things to watch out for?
So for me, there are 2 ways, really. They could either recreate a video that already exists, so that it can help them, develop their, their pronunciation and their rhythm and their English and their, it's like the shadowing technique, right? That's actually the way I learned English myself. So like imitating and copying what other native speakers say. So for me, that would be a super useful way to go about it. Like just have them pick one specific clip, one specific short video that they find interesting, some sort of role model they have, maybe, or some public figure that they admire, and then have them recreate that video, and then, maybe have them edit it, and then, play it in front of the class. That would be a super fun way to go about it. But also there's some other way that I would encourage to try. Say, for instance, that you've covered, the conditionals during class, right? So for me, a good way to encourage your students to film a short form video would be to be like, so we've learned about this in class. Why don't you film a short form video explaining the maybe 4 key points of what we just discussed in class, and have it like explain it with examples and very like, catchy, punchy way. And I think for them, it's going to be so helpful because there is a huge scripting element to creating videos. So when they sit down, jot down ideas, and then write the whole script, they're also kind of digesting and breaking down all the information that they previously learned during class, which is really going to help them not only, like I said, become confident in front of the camera, but also like they're also going to help them understand better what they just learned during class.
I think it's really helpful to provide students with some certain guidance on this. For example, write a script, put it at eye level so that, you can appear to still be looking at the camera as you're reading the script, or maybe even memorizing it. You never know. Give them guidance on what the topic should be. It could be their favorite sport or their reaction to the news of the day or whatever. And if you also give them a kind of limited amount of time, saying they can certainly go over that time if they want to, but it should be at least 30 seconds or so. I think that helps them to organize their thoughts and realize it's not so scary if they don't have to produce something that's 4 or 5 minutes long. There are just so many interesting ways that the students could talk about their point of view on something, their perspective, or they could give a review of a movie or a book, anything like that. It just depends on the needs of the class, whatever the teacher would like, and what the teacher thinks the students will be really interested in and be able to do quite successfully, I would say. This is setting students up for success because it's not a huge challenge, but it's one that brings a lot of return in terms of self-esteem and sense of accomplishment.
I think one of the other challenges as well is that we need to be careful, or rather take the opportunity that we have when we're using video in class to talk about the ethical use of video. How about creating video and being mindful of who else might be in the video, thinking about where the video that as a learner or as a teacher you've created, where that might end up in the future, who might see it. So issues around security, online security, ethics, privacy. I think about these very important skills in a sort of generic sense, talk about them in the context of using or creating videos, I think is a great opportunity as well for teachers. Now, that's a number of things that teachers need to do and think about, as with any other lesson plan, of course. What we haven't yet talked about is the possibility of teachers creating their own resources. I know, Maria, you have a lot of videos and a lot of people have watched them, but of course you've sort of made it your own job to do that. But for a teacher who has not done that before, what are both of your suggestions? Is this something that is worth getting into? Is it too much work? What would you say?
For sure, it is a lot of work, that's for sure, but it's definitely worth it. And I want to say, first of all, that us as teachers, I think like it's in us, like we have it in us. I think it's also a super cool way to make your students even connect with you, like in a deeper, meaningful way. And it's only gonna make the class richer and more meaningful.
Katie, if I'm listening to this podcast as a teacher, if I am new to the use of short form video, whether it's bringing them into class or asking learners to create them or even creating them myself, what would be a good way to get started with all of this?
I think there are a couple of ways you could approach it. One is by just trying it, just taking your phone and starting to film yourself doing anything. Maybe it's an instructional video on how to cook, your favorite meal or something, or your reaction to yesterday's soccer game or anything like that. Just pick it up and give it a try. That's absolutely a very legitimate, probably very natural way to go about it. But of course, if you want a little bit more guidance or maybe a little bit newer to the whole idea, you can Google it. There are thousands and thousands of resources online. So if you just Google something like short form video in the English language classroom or something like that, it doesn't even have to be that specific. You could certainly find a lot of guidance there. There are YouTube videos out there explaining how to do it. And luckily, because we all have our cell phones kind of connected to our hands all the time, you can just play around with it. And also, because it's a phone, it's not, a 2-hour Oscar-winning movie. If you film yourself, you don't like it, you notice that the lighting's not great, the audio's not great, or maybe the language you used was too high level, just try it again, record again, and, find something that you're happy with, and then you can use that in class. And once you do it, you'll notice that it's super easy, it's really engaging, and as Maria said, it gives the students more insight into your personality. Being vulnerable with students helps to kind of cement that relationship and helps to lower their anxiety as well, because they realize, wow, my teacher actually maybe made a mistake on this one thing, and it's okay. It's okay. My teacher is still the expert, and that means that it's okay if I make mistakes too.
I love it. You both said just give it a try, and it's so interesting because we've done quite a few of these podcasts, and every single episode, at least one of the guests says, whatever the topic is, just try it. Just do it. And it's such good advice. And of course, these days we can get a lot of ideas from, just watching great examples like Maria's videos, for example, and just try and imitate. And as you say, until you perhaps develop your own style. Of course, use AI to get ideas. Just ask AI to write you a short script. And of course, if you are very camera shy, I've seen teachers successfully just record images or maybe some other videos on top of that as well. So you don't have to necessarily put your own face in front of the camera if you really don't want to. Let's finish off with some final words of wisdom. Maria, what golden nuggets do you have to leave the audience with?
I don't want to be too repetitive. I'm just going to say that it might seem challenging in the beginning, but again, it's within us as teachers. We all are already entertainers. Go give it a try. I really want to encourage every single teacher that's watching this podcast right now. Please go get your phone, find out new ways to make your students interested about the language, new ways to make your students connect with the language. It's going to be so rewarding.
I think that the most important thing is for teachers to not put a lot of pressure on themselves to create the perfect video lesson. Just have fun, take a chance, take a shot, play around with the form. And something that's so rewarding is seeing students react to that, seeing their worlds being brought into the classroom. The relevance of your class will increase exponentially when they realize that, they're able to do their TikToks in class, or bring their TikToks, bring their personalities to class a lot more. Have fun, experiment with it. And, I think it's a very forgiving medium. So again, we can always delete, we can always edit, but you may find there's not even any need for it because students appreciate it when we're as human as they are too.
Well, you heard it here first. Have fun, just do it, and it will improve your teaching and help your learners. So, Maria and Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and check out the other conversations of the Teachers Talk Tech podcast by Cambridge University Press and Assessment.